Hi everybody, this is Rita Townsend, and I am outside again, and I am soaking up some sunshine, and I am going to tag a few friends here, and hopefully they'll be able to join me, and we will get going with what I think is some good news. I wish that it was all good news. It's not necessarily all good news, but I'm going to start with the good news. Hi, Lenora. I'm going to start with the good news, and I hope everybody can hear me because I got all kinds of new toys I'm playing with today. My husband just came home with some amazing news that I'm going to share with you before I share some interesting information that is not the best information that we could be getting right now. But my husband just came home after listening to President Trump's conference and announced that starting right away, I guess that's this weekend, that religious groups, religious institutions are now deemed essential. So free. And he also made the comment that if that's a problem for any of you governors, you may call me, but it may not be a good phone call. So I think that's really a good sign of where we're finally beginning to go with this just unbelievable situation. I don't know about you, but I think the more mixed information that we get, hi, Aline, we need your humor, girl. The more mixed information that we get, the harder it becomes to be following all the guidelines and following all the rules, and yet we just keep being told about situations where even following the rules or what we think is being reasonable is not reasonable enough. I know you're all seeing it on the news, so I don't need to remind you about that. But that is some good news that maybe we really are moving forward. I'm so blessed to be in Florida, and a lot of my people that watch my live are not in Florida. So I'm soaking up some sunshine. I'm wearing my sunglasses, sitting on the back of my house, enjoying a beautiful afternoon and feeling really hopeful. So with that, I want to share with you some information that I found very upsetting and disheartening. I wanted to give you the good news first. Things are moving forward. But after I shared the information last week about what freedom is going to look like, I think most of us still feel like even freedom looks different now. I am going to exercise now in a group, a small group, maybe 3 people at the most, and I find that people show up really not knowing what to do because they haven't been there in a while. You know, the social distancing in a gym, what's appropriate behavior, what you can touch and what you can't touch. There's still a lot of questions out there, and these are the things that we're going to be struggling with for a while. And I think that going forward, it's going to be a situation where every day might be some new things that maybe we feel uncomfortable about, but other people feel like we must do this or we must not do that. And we are living in a country where we get to choose and have a certain amount of freedom. So I do want to I do absolutely want to encourage everyone to do what you feel like is the right thing for you. But in my research this week, I came across something I just really had to share. And it's concerning because as we roll out and as we get to participate in more things, there are things that carry over. And this was a really stark reminder of that. And it was... It really concerned me. And this research is coming from a source that I use a lot, which is Psychology Today. And it's all about some of the after effects of quarantine. And I never really thought about after effects. I just always thought about freedom. Well, this comes from Lancet, which is a very respected medical journal that's out of the UK, and they do some tremendous research. And this is one that was just published in late March of this year regarding quarantine and the psychological coping skills of quarantine. And this is a big research. I'm going to just share some highlights that I think you might need to be aware of, because you might be seeing them now and you might be seeing them going forward. So this starts out by saying that even up to 3 years after this quarantine, you can still suffer from psychological effects. Well, I don't know about you, but I think people are out there already dealing with psychological effects. So this study evaluated some mental health problems that were related to quarantine, and they include such things as post-traumatic stress, depression, and alcoholism. And they can be traced back as far as 3 years earlier. Now, I think that depending on where you are, we've had a lot of freedom in Florida. We've had a lot of freedom, in particularly where I live in Florida. But there's other areas of the country and other areas of the world where I do have very dear friends and family who've had serious lockdown. And then there's my other friend who's on a sailboat in the Bahamas, and life has just been wonderful. But these are some very important things for you to really be aware of, because you actually may start seeing them. But this is a comprehensive review that was recently published about the psychological survival of quarantine. And forget about the public or the political discussions around these things. I'm simply here to tell you what some of the common things are, and then you can decide to choose for yourself. And some of these examples are certainly not things that we have suffered, but some of them we may know people who are suffering them now. And the first example is medical professionals. After the quarantine, they have a tendency to not want to go back to work. This research study found that 54% of people who had been quarantined also avoid people after the quarantine who are coughing or sneezing. They still want, 26% of them still want to avoid crowded places, and 21% of them want to avoid public places. So for some of us, those things sound maybe a little irrational. But for these people, based on these statistics, they are very, very real. And here's the caution. This investigation also reviewed evidence that the governments should be very cautious about even introducing a quarantine because of some of the counterproductive effects. And we're hearing that today. A lot of the medical professionals, oh, hey, Princess, oh, I miss you, that also are sharing some of the things that are happening in homes that affect people because they've been on this lockdown, quarantine, whatever you want to call it. Abuse, all kinds of abuse. Substance abuse is a big one. I hate to even think about it, but suicides, and these are real statistics. So these are some of the really harsh sides about this whole issue of quarantine. There's a more radical study that's included in this information that I don't really think pertains to us, but it's about a hospital with a SARS outbreak in Taiwan and some of the things that happened after that. Now, these were situations where even the medical workers were really on lockdown, so it was 24/7 for about 14 days, and they had some very serious after effects. I don't know that we've experienced that in this country, but these things were really impactful for the people that experienced this, and they have some very stark statistics about the staff, about the patients, all the healthcare workers. They're pretty disturbing. This was back in 2003, so that we're not talking ancient history here. They're talking about people that literally committed suicide in this particular incident. I don't think that that's particularly relevant in our country, but I'm telling you that these are some of the results of this whole issue. There was another incident that was investigated by Lancet in 2007 in Australia. It's a pretty modern country. They found that people who had children were at higher risk of psychological distress than those who had no children during the quarantine period. The psychological distress during a disease epidemic also found that having 3 or more children appeared protective against psychological distress. Now, the theory there is if you have 1.2 kids, you're probably sane or manageable. If you have 3 or more, maybe it's a little different issue there. But it's a distraction from the monotony of the quarantine was the ultimate finding of this. Circumstances that led to children that had nightmares and things like that. And apparently there's a meme going around right now about parents who are insisting there better be a vaccine soon or they're going to develop a vaccine for their kids. So some funny things too. But we often can overlook that the physical symptoms of anxiety, listen to this guys, can be very similar to the symptoms of a viral infection. Things like headaches, difficulty breathing, hyperventilation, coughing, panic, those are things that also can be symptomatic of what we've been dealing with, but they're not. They're just simple results of anxiety resulting from the actual quarantine rather than the actual disease. So what's the answer to this? Okay, the good news is there are a few things that, other than being aware, this is the whole reason I wanted to share this with you, because you may be feeling this way. You may have friends that feel this way. I have family members who feel this way. And so we need to have the knowledge so that we can make some rational decisions. And that's exactly why I am sharing with you. If you want the full article, I'm always happy to share my resources. But here is part of the conclusion. Part of it is that it's called altruism, or really giving back and doing things for other people out of a free choice. Understanding that sacrificing and assisting others we are less likely to suffer the results and the ongoing effects of things like a quarantine. So the poorer coping and the worse mental health becomes less likely. So good old giving back to others, being mindful of the needs of others. You can call it altruism, or you can just call it reaching out and being helpful. And I think simple things. If we go to a restaurant, or hey, if we're going to get a pedicure or a hair done, give an extra big tip, because those people have been out of business for months now. And that really does make you walk out of there feeling a little lighthearted, and I highly recommend it. So, I hated to be the bearer of bad news, but I wanted to start out with good news. Hey, I think we're going to be free, and religious freedom is back on the docket as a necessary I wouldn't call it a business, but it's essential. It is essential, and that's worthy of celebration for sure. So you might know people that fall into these categories, or you might know people that you're suspecting fall into this category of the after effects of this quarantine, because even though we're phasing out, it's not totally over yet. And there's a lot of still wacky behaviors going on. So for now, I'm happy to share my resource. It came from Psychology Today. I'd love for you to comment. This is a really good time to share something that's helpful for you and helpful for other people to understand what real world is during this particular time. For me, it's been getting out just a little bit more, feeling like I can walk in somewhere and maybe not wear a mask. Oop, don't shoot me. But I'm talking about a small store when there's not even a customer inside and they're happy to have me there. It's a personal choice, and I want you to feel free to make that personal choice. I love if you would share that with other people and leave your comments and leave your helpful comments as well. I have a great health and wellness Facebook page. I'd love to send you to that. I partnered with a doctor who's been practicing medicine for 30 years. We have some great tips on there. Some of them are just easy daily things to do. Once again, you've heard me preach this for weeks. Please don't Google things. Please don't keep looking for things that other people are telling you. Stay with CDC, stay with the National Institutes of Health, stay with Mayo Health, Harvard Health, Medical News Today that has a daily newsletter on COVID response. But these are places where they're unbiased medical, hopeful things for you to know, because we're still hearing the really dangerous things, literally dangerous things. I have a YouTube channel that I'm really trying to funnel some more information into that as well, and look for that under my name. I love it when you join me live. We just have some amazing people in this group, people that are already giving and sharing and doing wonderful things during this terrible quarantine, pandemic, whatever you want to call it these days. So look for the hopeful things, be altruistic and giving to other people and sharing, and be aware. If you don't know what I shared in the early part of this video today, go back and do the replay, because there are things you may see in your own children, you may see in your own family, that really literally may be a result of what we've been going through, and you may not even recognize it. Thanks for joining me. I hope I have good news next week. And enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the Florida sunshine for those of you who are in Florida. And be safe and be well. And I'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks.